Welcome, everyone. Good evening, and a very warm welcome for our 10th Climate Action Provincial Assembly, or CAPA, focused on the October 19th provincial election. My name is Dauncey, and I'm your MC for this evening. The event's being recorded, but the short breakout room we're going to start off with is not being recorded. So we acknowledge that Canada's the land of the First Peoples, the First Nations, the Inuit, the Métis. We acknowledge and we honor the treaty lands and the unceded traditional territories on which we all reside, work, and recreate. We're grateful for the Indigenous knowledge and ways of being as we learn and relearn and unlearn the history of Canada, the true history of Canada, which started long before we settlers arrived. Our purpose in this CAP is to share everything we know about ways in which climate action groups and concerned people can participate in the coming election, from championing climate leaders to asking questions at all candidate meetings. Before I go on, WeCan is a non-partisan organization, so we're not going to discuss should I vote Green or should I vote NDP. That's a local decision which local people can make locally, but we have no advice on that score. We're not. We just generally think the more NDP and Green Party progressive, the more climate champion party people get elected, the better. So we've got four speakers. We'll have Chris Anderson from New Mode, who will tell us about the platform they've set up to send emails to candidates with one click. Emiko Newman from the BC Climate Emergency Campaign, who will talk us through the election toolkit they've created. Sebastian Sajda from Organising for Change, who will talk us through their work to get out the vote and other wisdoms. Then I'll talk about our weekend election resources kit, including our detailed questions for candidates and our table of all candidates' meetings. Following this, we invite anyone who's making plans for a climate-related event or initiative of some kind to share what you're doing, and then we'll get into questions and discussion, all that stuff. So to start things off, let's spend 10 minutes in breakout groups of 3 to 4 people. We invite you to get to know each other and the climate group you're active with and share any plans you might have for the coming election. So the breakout, over to you. The breakout rooms will be now opening. Over to you, Shaylee, to get us all going for that.
So anyway, welcome back. I'm going to sub in for Guy temporarily because he said this might happen. So I'd like to invite Emiko Newman to share the election toolkit that she's put together for the BC Climate Emergency Campaign. Emiko works with the Climate Emergency Unit, which assembled the BC Climate Emergency Campaign, in which WeCan and many other groups are active participants. She's passionate about the intersection of social justice and climate justice. She has a master's degree in social justice education and environmental studies from the University of Toronto, and her past work includes coordinating anti-racism workshops, working as a research assistant on environmental and sustainability education, and teaching piano. She's also an avid field hockey player, a pianist, and a taiko player. Floor is yours, Emiko.
Wow, thank you, Douglas. I did not expect that whole bio to be read out. So now you all know everything about me. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And as Douglas mentioned, I am the coordinator of the BC Climate Emergency Campaign. We just launched this election toolkit in advance of the October election recently, and we're really hoping that it can be used by as many people as possible. So that's the main thing I'll be focused on as I'm talking with you all tonight. And I've prepared a short presentation, so here we go. All right. So quickly, before I get into the details of the toolkit, I recognize so many of you on the call tonight, and it's great to see you all. Many of you are already involved with the BC Climate Emergency Campaign, but some of you are not. So I figured it would be helpful to give a bit of a background information about what we do. So the campaign came together in 2021, and basically the first task of the campaign was to come up with this list of 10 urgent actions, which was then put into an open letter and sent to the BC government. The idea behind this was that there were so many groups in BC feeling like BC's climate plan, Clean BC, was simply not an emergency climate plan, and that the government had to be pushed to do better. So this open letter was sent to the government, and at that time, 200 organizations had signed on in support of the letter and the 10 actions. And here we are about 3 years later, and we have about 585, almost 590 organizations who have signed on to show their support. So we are always growing, and it's really exciting to see more folks joining the call. And it's not only climate groups who are involved with our campaign, it's a whole broad number of different sectors who are involved, from housing groups and faith groups and labor unions and Indigenous communities, seniors, the list goes on and on. So it's really nice to be able to convene so many diverse organizations. These are the 10 actions, and I'll just walk folks through them really quickly so that you can get a sense of the things that we focus our work around. So first action is to set binding climate pollution targets based on science and justice, to invest in a thriving, regenerative, zero emissions economy, to rapidly wind down all fossil fuel production and use, to end fossil fuel subsidies and make polluters pay, leave no one behind, which is the just transition action, protect and restore nature, invest in local, organic, regenerative agriculture and food systems, accelerate the transition to zero emission transportation, accelerate the transition to zero emission buildings, and finally, to track and report progress on these actions every year. So everything that we do at the BC Climate Emergency Campaign relates to at least one of these actions, if not more. The ones that you see in bold there and kind of that orangey color, those are the actions around which we have formed working groups. Because of course, having 10 actions is great, but it's simply not feasible to be focusing on 10 different things all the time. And so we did have to establish some priorities. So the bolded actions are the ones that we have been acting on the most, I would say, over the past year. Oh, just some highlights of various events that we have held, but I will not get into detail on that here. So welcome to our 2024 Provincial Election Toolkit. So it is housed on our website, and I'll put a whole bunch of links into the chat once I'm done speaking here, but just for your information, you can also, if you're on our website, it's located, if you can see where my mouse is pointing, the top right corner of the header there on our website. So who is this toolkit meant for? It's basically meant for anybody who aims to bring climate into the conversation when we're talking about the election. I'm sure everybody here is in agreement that climate is simply not a prominent discussion point when we're hearing candidates speaking, we're hearing our elected officials speaking. And so we felt like we wanted to try to help folks do their best to bring climate and the climate emergency into the conversation. And, Guy mentioned at the start that this session is nonpartisan, and we as a campaign are also nonpartisan. The toolkit itself is nonpartisan. We're not telling you who to vote for. We're not telling you choose this candidate, choose this party, but we are, we want to really put pressure on the candidates so that we can identify which ones are aligned with us in terms of climate. The aim of the toolkit aims are fourfold. So first, to highlight the need for urgent political action addressing the climate emergency. I know all of us here are aligned on that. Next, to help voters make informed decisions, and I'll speak more to that next. Third is to show why climate solutions contribute to healthier, more affordable and equitable societies. So it's quite intersectional, what we talk about. And then finally, to spread awareness of the scientific evidence that global warming is primarily caused from burning fossil fuels. Again, as we all know. So what is actually in this toolkit? It's divided into a number of sections. The first section, which is really the meat of the entire thing, is questions for candidates. This is our longest section. We created a whole bunch of questions as a campaign. It was a very collaborative process centered around our 10 actions. So we divide up the questions based on the actions. And these are the questions that we want folks to be taking to candidates. And I did speak already with some people on this call who are holding all candidates meetings. That's fantastic. This toolkit was created for that exact purpose. It's a ready-made list of questions that you can throw at your candidates and see what answers they give back. Second section of the toolkit is all about myth busting. So all of us are hearing tons of greenwashing being thrown around and anti-climate talking points that are not true. And so this was the section of the toolkit where we felt like we could support folks to feel more knowledgeable when they're having these conversations, because I think that's a common sentiment, is that people think, I'm not an expert. I don't really feel equipped to be talking about this stuff. I don't have the facts on hand. And so that's what this section was for. It's to help people feel more educated and more confident when they're talking to folks about climate. The next section, we have some additional FAQ on LNG and fracking, because a significant number of the questions do revolve around LNG and fracking. And so if people are still confused about what those things are, that's what this section addresses. And then finally, we have a brand new section, which we just added in, I think this week or so, and that's all about affordability and climate connections. So we just actually launched a whole bunch of new resources around affordability and climate, basically with the idea that people, I would say the movable middle, those sorts of folks are not really making the connections. And we're hearing things like, well, we just simply can't afford to take climate action because there are so many other pressing issues, cost of living, rent, groceries. And so we're trying to say, hey, these things are not separate. They are actually deeply connected, and we can be addressing these things at the exact same time. The affordability crisis, climate crisis are intertwined, and we can address them together. So that is the fourth section of the toolkit. And if you're listening and you're thinking, wow, this sounds awesome, so what should I do? Well, here is what you can do. We want you to share the toolkit with your networks and with your friends and with your family, and there are a number of ways for you to do so. So we have created a little promo video if you're on social media and you want to direct folks to the toolkit through your social channels like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is. We've also created some graphics, which are also easy to share on social media or by email as well. And actually the graphics that are included are the ones that I just showed you. They're these three. And we put an amplification kit together, which has the links to everything, the links to the graphics, the video, the website, everything. So it's all in one place, which means I will send out the amplification kit in the chat once I'm finished here. You can just access that and then basically share the toolkit in whichever way makes most sense for you. And finally, I had to include this as well, because if you're hearing about the campaign for the first time and you're thinking, ooh, this is great, I would like to be involved, then we are always welcoming new organizations to come on board. You can go to our website, top right corner. Here is the button, Take Action. That will direct you to the sign-on form for you to become a signatory of the BC Climate Emergency Campaign. And any organization is so welcome to join us. If you were already a signatory, then thank you for doing that. Folks can also join our full table if you would like to get more involved and attend our meetings and become a part of our email list and that sort of thing. So I will stop there and thank you so much. I don't know if there's time for questions or not, but I will also put my email in the chat in case folks want to reach out to me.
Thanks, Emiko. We'll do all the questions together when we have a full discussion afterwards. I've solved my Zoom access problem. I got shut out. And so, yes, I mean, and also in our weekly newsletter from Weekend, we're featuring these under an election heading every time. So you'll find you can grab it from there and email it. So our next guest is, let's welcome Steve Anderson. Steve is the co-founder and CEO of New Mode, who's going to tell us about their new Letters to Candidates platform. Steve's a leader in strategies and civic engagement, advocacy, and crowdsourcing. Prior to launching New Mode, he founded and led the award-winning international civic engagement organization Open Media, growing it to over 1 million active supporters worldwide in less than 5 years. His experience on the frontiers of online campaigning and engagement led him to found New Mode as a way to support the world's most important causes and to rebalance democratic decision-making in favor of people and sustainable communities. New Mode supports over 600 organizations around the world, which have used it to send, wait for this, 80 million messages to government decision makers. Steve, the floor is yours, and thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone's on this call and the important work that you're doing. That number is now 100 million. It's a bit dated.
Whoa.
I'll share my screen here. And yeah, what I wanted to show people is this tactic that is available to folks. There's a free version that you can use. There's also a professional version, but it's a tactic that's available during the election, which is making it so supporters, citizens, people can reach out directly to candidates during the election. They'll show how easy it is for them to do that. And the idea there is, this is when candidates are the most open to democratic input. And so this is a real opportunity for us to have local voters send a messages, ask what their stance is on climate issues, and kind of encourage them to actually make a bold stand, so that those who are elected can then be followed up with and be like, hey, you said that you support these policies. Now let's see you put it into practice. And we've definitely seen that work in the past. One example is not on climate, but is $10 day campaign. Used our platform to do various tactics, but one of which was this emailing candidates. And then after the NDP formed government, so they had basically committed to $10 a day, then they put it into practice. And now we have it across the country. There's a lot of steps in between.
Is childcare you're referring to, right?
Sorry? Yeah,
$10 a day childcare.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
I have 2 young kids, so I'm used to talking about it, because it's a pretty amazing thing that the progressives have won. And you can also kind of grow the power of your community at the same time, grow your base as well, and also encourage people to actually vote during the election. Because we've seen that when people, there's been some studies on this, when people get engaged through advocacy leading up to an election, their propensity to vote is like 51% more than if they had not taken action. So just engaging people in this sort of advocacy can actually encourage them to vote, and then hopefully they vote for a candidate that is strong on climate. So I'll show a couple examples. So this is Wilderness Committee. And so they're trying to get people to message their local candidates about old growth. They're leaving this message blank with some talking points you can add. If you were running a campaign, you could also pre-fill this message. You could have it be like a pledge to vote thing, that kind of idea. And then basically the supporter that you send it to, will fill in their information, and based on their address, it'll pull up all of their local candidates. This BC United one will be removed soon, but it will find all their local candidates automatically, and then they click send my letter. And so when they click send their letter, it will email all those candidates saying, what's your stance on old growth? That's what I'm going to vote for, and I want to know where you stand. That's important to me, that kind of thing. And it will also, after they click there, it'll prompt them to share it on social media. So you can also kind of expand the reach of these ideas. So the idea is that making it easy for people to message their candidates during the election and to kind of grow your supporter base. You could also do what these folks have done. That actually the $10 a day campaign I was mentioning, this is the kind of next step. They're messaging party leaders. So the idea is that making it really easy for those who care about climate or other progressive issues to send messages to candidates and get them to make commitments when they're most kind of open to our input, and then we can build power around that going forward. I won't show this in detail because I know time is tight, but if you access the platform on the back end, it's really simple to kind of put this together. You would just pick this legislative assembly targets. You would just edit the content you want on the campaign, and then it'll give you a campaign page like this. The only other tactic I'll show here before I move on is another really powerful tactic during the election is getting supporters to send messages to send letters to local papers, because it's kind of like if you're a local candidate, you can imagine you're getting an email from voters, and then you're also seeing letters in the local paper saying, I want to know where my candidates stand on climate. Here's what's important. I haven't seen X candidate come out on this. And so similar tool from the front end. The supporter clicks next page. It'll pull up all of their local papers. They write their letter, they click submit, and I'll email all those papers saying, and this was about something else, but it could be like, I want to know what my candidate in this riding believes on climate. This person seems quite strong. This other candidate seems less strong. That sort of thing. You can do it in a nonpartisan way. And then, in this campaign from 350, here's a bunch of letters published in local papers just to show it can actually kind of make it into papers. And so, yeah, like I said, this we used to only have kind of a professional advocacy platform, but now there's a free version you can use, and I can post a link in the chat. So any kind of groups can use that, and if you want more sophisticated elements of advocacy, then you can choose to upgrade. But yeah, this is the first election where we've had the free version, so I'm really excited to kind of be able to share with you and for folks to make use of it, because it's been quite powerful in the past. And I'm running this platform, but really the reason that I run it is because I care about climate and other issues. So this is the whole kind of reason why we set up this platform in the first place, is to help people on this call and others like you to kind of have powerful tactics at your disposal. So I hope it's helpful, and yeah, I'll throw some links in the chat, and yeah, thanks again for everyone's work. I think I saw some of the organizations, and I follow and support many of them. So it's nice to kind of be on the call with you. Thanks.
That's fantastic, Steve. Many thanks. Just as a quick thing before I move to Sebastian, how are you finding the email contacts for every single candidate in every single electoral district?
Yeah, so we find the data in a few different places. So Elections BC publishes some of them. The parties publish them on their website. And so basically we just go through all of those. Sometimes it's the local candidates. So we just go through, our team goes through and finds the data on all those different sources and puts them together and makes them available for folks in our system. So the idea is like, you don't have to, as a campaigner, worry about that. We'll take care of it. And I should also give credit to Wilderness Committee, because they actually have been collaborating with us as well to make sure we have the most up-to-date candidates.
It's very cool. So thanks, that's wonderful. And I'm sure there'll be questions coming back to you when we get to discussion time. So I just want to introduce now Sebastian next, Sebastian Sajda, to tell us what the work they're doing in organizing for change to get out the vote. So Sebastian is OFC's program coordinator, providing support and delivering OFC's campaign accelerator. Before that, he was one of our most active board members and volunteers with WeCan. He's a passion for local organizing, being a community and political organizer in Surrey, working on climate and conservation issues in the city. He's also active with Force for Nature. He's got a background in political science from Simon Fraser University and UVic, and a love of technology, including ways in which we can use AI to benefit the climate movement and progressive change. So over to you, Seb.
All right, thanks for that introduction, Guy. I didn't know AI was going to make it into my intro bio there, but very nice. Before I get started on OFC's offerings, I just wanted to actually say a little bit about OFC. It's kind of funny. I actually was trained by OFC as an advocate and an activist about 4 years ago. But even since between then and starting to work for them about a year ago, I didn't really know much about what they were doing. And they are actually a pretty big force. We are a pretty big force in the environmental movement here in BC. So we're what's called a collective impact strategy of 12 of the largest staffed organizations dealing with climate and conservation here in BC. So our members are CPAWS, Conservation Northwest, Dogwood, Eco-Justice, Georgia Strait Alliance, Pembina, STAND, Sierra Club, Wildsite, Watershed Watch Salmon Society, West Coast Environmental Law, and Yellowstone to Yukon. So those are the groups that we primarily work with in order to deliver both coordinated government relations as well as various coordinated organizing campaigns. That being said, we're trying to expand our reach and trying to pull in more medium and small sort of grassroots groups to be involved in our offerings. So that's kind of where we're at as an organization. And what we're trying to do in this election and what we've done for many elections in the past is to function as the group that's doing the Get Out the Vote campaigning. So Get Out the Vote is the idea of trying to get folks to the polls and to vote. Like many of your groups, we're nonpartisan. We're not telling people who to vote for. So our goal is really to get people to vote, and the people that we want to vote are those people who are on the lists of our member groups. If we can make sure that environmentally minded folks vote, then we're going to have a better result in the election going forward. So we have 3 main offerings for our Get Out the Vote campaign this time around, starting with the biggest ask, and that is to actually become a part of the Get Out the Vote hub as an organization. If your organization has at least a couple of thousand names on lists with phone numbers, then we invite you to come talk to us, join the hub. You can go to this website, which I'm hoping Doug is linking in the chat right now. There'll be a little bit of a form to fill out with some information, and then we'll get back to you. This is the part that I'm primarily working on, so you can also contact me by email, which is Sebastian at Organizer for Change. It should be put in the chat as well. I think I have it listed there. And what this entails is you'll give us your list. We will act as sort of like a consulting agency. So it's not that you're giving us your list or transferring your list in a way that would violate provincial privacy laws. So we've already sort of thought through all of this, and we've done it many times before. The idea is we would take those lists and we would facilitate phone banking operations in order to reach all of those people and make sure that they know that they need to vote and make sure that they're supported in going to vote and making a plan to vote. So functionally, it's going to depend on your group and how you want to interact with this. It could be the case that basically you send us your list and then you send us, some volunteers in your organization who want to do this, and we would train them and we would facilitate those virtual phone banks. But it could also be a bit more expansive where you say it's okay for us to pull in other volunteers to help contact your list. So what we would do, let's say your group joins the hub and they say, yeah, we want to make sure we get everybody listed, we would have a process where volunteers who are volunteering to do the phoning to get out the vote would actually temporarily join your group as volunteers to enable them to be able to call your list. And once we have all of these different lists from all of these major groups, which is major and sort of medium-sized groups that have these lists, we'll have a really good sense across the province, riding by riding, where we have strength and where we have weakness. And our experts in sort of government relations and political strategy are going to be doing sort of determinations on what are the strategic geographic areas. Where are the places that we need to put people calling to make sure that environmental voters show up to the polls and make big changes in terms of outcomes of this election. I think everybody knows it's an important election. And remember, we're nonpartisan, but certainly we know the importance of targeting certain strategic battleground areas. So that's the first big piece. And please either fill out the form or you can contact me directly to get involved in that, joining the hub as an organization. Our second offering here is around debates, town halls, forums, those sorts of things. We're trying to index and catalog all of the ones that exist. So we have a checklist with some resources for helping put these on. And you can sort of submit your event to us so that we know about it. But the big thing this is going to be when we launch our Vote Environment website, which I will mention again in a bit. When we launch that website, we'll have a very large map of all of these events that are going on. That'll have links to register for the events, as well as links to recordings if they exist. And we certainly encourage folks to record those events. One important function of this is, of course, to get people to pay attention to the environment, to promote those events, make sure that folks are aware of them. But I think there's also a really strong case here for the historical preservation of this information. So it's one of those things where we often go through an election and then we sort of lose all this information. But having all of this stuff indexed, seeing where candidates were 4 years ago, it's going to be super interesting the next time around. So if your group is hosting an event, I would encourage you to visit the website, submit the information about your forum or debate or town hall, whatever it may be, and we'll get it listed and we'll provide whatever support we can. My colleague AK is going to be doing a lot of this. So if you want to contact somebody by email, it would be her that you would contact. Lastly, out of these three offerings, we have the opportunity to just volunteer as a phone banker. So let's say you're not an organization or your organization doesn't have a list that has phone numbers, but you still want to be involved in phone banking, please come and volunteer. We'll be running virtual phone banks. We'll be calling those numbers up that we do have just to encourage people to vote. You'll probably be joining a group sort of as a volunteer. So let's say Dogwood says, it's okay for groups to call on, or not to call on our behalf, but it's okay for volunteers to come in and join our phone banking. Well, you'll get a spiel about what it means to be a Dogwood volunteer, and then you would go and proceed to call through this list. And again, this is really just, you're not convincing anybody to vote any way, that way or the other. All you're doing is calling folks to make sure that they go and vote. This sounds like a super simple thing, and it doesn't sound like it should be that impactful, but the studies have shown over and over and over and over again that get out the vote is the most important way to move elections. We need to make sure that people vote, especially in strategic geographic areas. So that's sort of that third offering. And just before I pass the mic back over to Guy, I just wanted to mention again this idea of the Vote Environment website. So this is another feature that I don't have anything to show you folks with right now, but that's the one that I mentioned where that debate map will exist. But it's also going to be a hub for election news information, which will be not only a great place to go check out what's going on with the environment during the election, sort of news articles as they come, but we're going to have a little bit of a sneaky feature here where we're going to do some redirects, and we're going to be trying to get around the meta news block. You can't post a news article to Meta right now, which is Facebook, which is a huge source of information, but it's going to be a great tool when we're delivering those articles through redirects so that you can just post it the way you used to be able to post it. And you can just click on it and read the article. That's sort of a big goal, and that's probably going to launch in about a week. I mean, we're in the crunch time here, and we're moving forward on all cylinders, but that's the sort of final offering that I wanted to mention. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Guy.
Fabulous. Thanks, Seb. A lot of detailed stuff here. So it's my turn. I want to show you what we've been preparing for you within WeCan. By way of my personal background, I've been a self-employed climate activist and troublemaker for some 30 years. which includes writing 2 major books on climate solutions, founding the BC Sustainable Energy Association, and founding the Victoria Carshare Crop, now part of Modo. I'm currently Weekends co-chair. At weekends, I enjoy working in our garden, exploring the island, and of late making delicious Oregon grape jelly. So I want to share, first of all, our election resources toolkit. If I can get the right share button going. So we've assembled, some of this is just repeated stuff from what you've heard already, but it's putting it all in one place. So there's the get out the vote stuff that Sebastian was talking about and the phone banking. We're hoping that we will be able to assemble the party climate platforms. They're not really published yet, but that when it comes out, we'll have that. And CAPA is approaching MLAs to secure their commitments in an open letter. So if you live in the riding of the Minister of Health or Josie Osborne's ministry, Kate would really like you to reach out to them for help, right? There's the advice on hosting a climate debate from Organising for Change, the one Sebastian just mentioned. There's the BC Climate Emergency Toolkit that Emiko was talking about. And there's New Mode, the references that Steve gave us. So then, without knowing that Sebastian and OFC were doing a thing on election events, we've put our own election event thing together. This is a province-wide list of climate-related election events listed by electoral district. And so a lot of them, there's nothing here, but you see, Esquimalt, there's when we know about them, there's the link for them, Kamloops North, Kamloops Centre, Kelowna, Ladysmith, Mid-Island, and so these are events we know about. And the way this works, we may find we're going to merge this with what Sebastian's doing in the end, I don't know. But to stop anyone just getting it and writing it, if you know of a climate-related event, send an email with details to Shaylee, and she'll give you permission to enter it directly. One thing I've noticed in putting these events together is that when they're organized by a Chamber of Commerce, they're what I would call controlled all-candidate meetings. In other words, you've got to submit your question in advance, and they will decide if they're going to ask the candidates or not. And I think we should start talking about free all-candidates meetings versus controlled all-candidates meetings. So at a free meeting, anyone can come up to the microphone and ask you a question. It's not set up and controlled in advance, which I find a kind of rather invidious way of doing things. It removes the democracy of things. And so, hang on, the questions for candidates. Is that the election events? Is it in the chat, the questions for candidates? I'm going to stop sharing a minute and find out what happened to our questions for candidates document. Can you?
It's there now.
In the election events, questions for candidates. Yeah, this one here. I'm going to share this one now because thank you. I messed up myself there. So this is, we've assembled the different questions for candidates, including those from the BC Climate Emergency Campaign. And so what this goes, there's questions for every Conservative candidate, every NDP candidate, every Green Party candidate, then questions on the climate crisis, climate fracking, LNG, affordable economy, forests and nature, food and farming, transportation and buildings. This includes questions from, Wilderness Committee. So the only ones I want to share with you are these fun ones. I think every Conservative Party candidate should have this question. A recent global poll by the UN Development Programme found that 80% of people think their country should strengthen its commitments to tackle the crisis. Here in BC, we've seen devastated floods and forest fires and an extraordinary heat wave that killed 600 people. Yet your leader, John Rustad, has consistently questions of human-caused global warming, has criticized effort to tackle the climate crisis, has said that the climate narrative is part of a conspiracy to reduce the world population, promised to undo many of the province's climate policies, and said his first priority is to speed up approvals for mining, pipelines, and LNG projects. Do you support his views? That might need to be cut down a bit in the question time available. For every NDP candidate, the NDP government has developed a very detailed plan known as Clean BC with a legislated goal to reduce climate pollution by 40% by 2030. NDP's also supported proposal for 6 LNG projects that would increase our climate pollution by 50%, neutralizing all efforts to tackle the climate crisis. If you are elected as our region's MLA, will you be a champion for the proposed LNG plants, or will you oppose them and argue instead for a more sustainable economy with thousands of jobs building affordable housing and generating wind and solar energy? And for every Green Party candidate, If you're elected and your party is able to participate in a confidence and supply agreement with another party, what specific new laws and initiatives would you demand to tackle the climate crisis as a condition of supporting the new government? And I won't go through all the other questions, but they've all been framed up in a way that hopefully will get people's attention. So that's what we're putting on the table. And now I think we'll open it up to everyone for questions and discussion. And I'm going to go to the gallery so I can see who wants to. Well, first of all, before we do that, is anyone locally organizing an event or an initiative around the election that you'd like to tell us about? Yes, Jason, go for it.
Thanks, Guy, and thanks to everybody here at Weekend for the incredible work you all do. I'm involved with, Frack Free BC, which is a coalition of the Wilderness Committee, Stand, and the Dogwood Initiative. We are encouraging people to go to visit campaign offices and answer the fracking question, or make candidates answer the fracking question. If you go to frackfreebc.ca, you'll find an election toolkit that we've created, and we'll be reaching out to all of the people who are signed up on our lists to encourage them to go to visit the campaign offices of Conservatives, New Democrats, and Greens to communicate directly our concerns about continued fracking and LNG expansion. And then once you have done this sort of polite kind of office visit, if you're interested, we'll be looking at street theaters and other ways to draw some attention to candidates who are promoting irresponsible positions on the climate in the election. So yeah, visit frackfreebc.ca and feel free to reach out to myself, Jason at wildernesscommittee.org. Our week of action is September 23rd to 29th. Thanks all.
Thanks, Jason. So Carol, you're up, and then Nancy.
Yes, Citizens Environment Network in Colwood is co-hosting an all candidates meeting October 2nd, which will be held at the Esquimalt United Church. And there are many environmental groups that are working as co-hosts. We've come up with our questions, and hopefully it will be a very successful night. And yeah, we just have to determine who our candidates are now. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. No, Nancy, where did you go? Nancy, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. That sounds amazing. Thank you, Guy. And yeah, we'll be lucky to have Emiko with us tomorrow again. So with Regenerate BC, me, Karen, and Michelle will be hosting an hour webinar tomorrow at 4 p.m. BC time. And we'll talk about climate, and then we'll talk a little bit about the parties as well. So it's a 60-minute kind of fun and interactive session tomorrow. And I'll put the link in the chat.
Excellent. Who else? Is anyone else organizing an event or an initiative of some kind in the election you'd like to tell us about? Yes, Laura.
Yeah, so the West Kootenay Climate Hub, along with, sorry, my lighting's weird here. The Council of Canadians, Nelson West Kootenay, and Doctors and Nurses for Planetary Health are organizing an all candidates forum on October 3rd in Nelson at the United Church. And we have confirmation from 3 of the only 3 candidates right now confirmed that are running. So, and also I just had a little something to feedback. So Guy, you were mentioning sort of a free where everybody can come up to the mic versus where you can have your own questions in advance or have participants come. What we've decided, because what we find a lot of times is when you leave an open mic, it's often a time for somebody to get up and monopolize the discussion and maybe not even get a question out at the end. So we're going to have people write questions that they can put in the box, and we're going to choose 4, and the organizing group and 1 youth organization are going to choose the other 4, assuming, that there's 4 candidates and 2 minutes apiece. We kind of looked at the time for a 2-hour, and it's about all we can get is 8 questions, but lots of great resources here. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Laura. Yes, Laurie.
I put our event into the chat for you. In Penticton, Summerland, which is our area, we have organized a climate forum, all candidates climate forum, October 8th at our seniors drop-in center. We only have 2 candidates, but I understand there's a new green candidate as of a few days ago. So we have to reach out to that person to see if they're going to be available for that forum. And we're just putting together our questions now. So there were good resources today from both. We've used the Emiko's list initially, and so we're still working on our questions.
Thanks. Dune, you're up next.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. Our group, Seniors for Climate Victoria, is taking advantage of the fact that Seniors Day, October 1st, which is the call of action for across Canada, is only 19 days from the election. So we're providing an opportunity for numerous groups to have a booth at our rally on the BC Legislature lawns to present information to seniors, which will help them decide who to vote for. And we have a lot of groups that will be represented, and still an opportunity if anybody else wants to join us that hasn't. And so we're going to have some petitions, and we're going to have as many climate scientists and advocates as we can talking to people. Thanks.
Fabulous. Janet, you're up next. You're all muted. Yeah, there we go.
All right, fixed it. In Vernon, the Sustainable Environment Network Society is presenting an environmental all candidates forum on October 3rd, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Town Theater in Vernon. We are inviting candidates from both the Vernon Lumbee ridings and the Kelowna Lake Country Coldstream ridings, free, nonpartisan event.
That's great. So Dune, you're back up again? As an old hand? Janet. No, hey, Catherine Jane's next, yes. You're muted. Go for it. You're muted, Catherine Jane. Searching for the unmute button.
Yeah, right. I'm with the Nanaimo Climate Action Hub, and we're hosting 2 all candidates forums focused on the climate crisis. Guy is going to be our moderator. We have sent out invitations to all of the candidates and have only got commitments from the Greens so far. The NDP candidates are non-committal, and the one Conservative candidate has said he has a conflict on that date. I talked about this in the breakout group, and they had some good suggestions for if, the Conservative candidate doesn't show up, you can have an empty chair for that person, which can be quite a telling illustration of their attitude towards this issue. Other suggestions, you can bird dog candidates at all the local events they're attending. A particularly clever one I thought was ask the candidate for a selfie, and while the picture's being taken, whisper sweet nothings in their ear about the climate. It's sort of difficult to try and get candidates who don't want to talk about the climate to talk about it. And the Conservatives have a history of not showing up to all candidates forums that they're not particularly interested in. So we'll need to find some strategy for dealing with that.
Yes, so Seb, let me throw the question to you, because you're really good at putting together these province-wide resources. Might it be possible, and maybe Steve can chip in too, and Emiko, if we had a list of every Conservative Party of BC candidate in the province, and next to them any known comments they've made or refuses to comment or refuses to respond, to embarrass them in public? Is that potential? We could get that organized?
I mean, it's there's potential. I'm going to take off my OFC hat here, so I'm not
sure.
OFC. I think that, and another thing that was brought up in a lot of the talk about the events as well as the candidate questions is there are new interpretations of BC elections law, and I just want to caution everybody about this, and because they're untested and complaint based. So by that, they have new thinking on what a lot of these election advertising laws mean. They haven't been tested in court or tested by actually running through an election. And they are very, very, very broad. So the thing that worries me, for instance, if John Rustad says climate change isn't real, and you put on an event that says climate change is real, come to our forum, it's important to talk about climate. At this point, you are taking a position on an issue that a candidate has spoken about, and you must be registered as an election advertiser. This is very worrisome to me. So to get back to your idea, Guy, I could see somebody doing that, a group doing that, but it would have to be registered as election advertising to protect that group and to protect that initiative. That being said, it is fairly easy to become registered as an election advertiser. It's not that hard. And if groups are doing stuff like that, I would encourage you to get that registration. It's better safe than sorry. And to communicate directly with Elections BC about your questions about what is or is not election advertising.
Yeah. So let me just share the rest of our election resource kit, because I stopped at the questions for candidates climate events. We have here the election advertising rules from Organizing for Change. So you can go directly and click on that one. And some other cool resources like VoteMate, where you can compare parties. This guy called Leif Kucharan is putting together this for BC, could compare the candidates. An issue called New Majority Youth Vote Concierge Services, Maeve Sharkey, and advice on going door-to-door from Climate Outreach in Britain when you're having door-to-door questions and meetings and stuff like that. What's new in the questions here? Sebastian saying Leaf is great and VoteMate's amazing. Yes. Seb says if he was unemployed right now, he'd volunteer to help with VoteMate as an amazing project. Doug, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It was fascinating to hear Sebastian's discussion of the election laws. It's a tragedy. It should be the other way around. It should be that if a group of people put on an event to talk about climate change and the candidate says that climate change isn't real, they should have to be the one that's reported. But anyway, enough of that. I wanted to ask Steve a question about his advocacy platform and wondered how he monitors who uses it and for what. Because I could imagine, having read some books about the fossil fuel lobby groups, that a fossil fuel lobbyist could use your website to fill up the mailboxes of all the candidates with pro-fossil fuel information, which is probably not what you want to happen.
Steve, I know you've got an easy, quick answer to that one. Is Steve still with us? Maybe a quick looking through the list of people. I think Steve's left us. I'm pretty sure that Steve's commitment to working for progressive organizations is such that he's not going to have any memberships from that sort of stuff. Probably that's probably the answer. So look, open question time about ideas. I mean, has anyone got any advice on how to persuade Conservatives and reluctant candidates to attend all candidate meetings? We go to all this trouble. The one piece of advice I have from previous experiences, like get other local organizations like the Rotary Club or the Boy Scouts, or to sign on to say we support this all candidates meeting. Please show up. Put the moral pressure on them. and write a letter to the local paper saying it's happening, to put the moral pressure on them and shame them into not showing up. Did anyone have advice or experience from previous elections on how to persuade them to show up? Yeah, Seb.
Yeah, for those groups that haven't already organized the event, like if you're starting with a new event and there is a history of maybe the candidate not showing up to previous events, like the conservative candidate or the anti-climate candidate not showing up, it might be good to just partner with non-climate environment groups and just be like, hey, can we get one question in here? And we'll promote your event as well. Because the conservatives are going to be much more likely to attend an event that's just a general forum rather than an environmental forum. They're going to an environmental forum, they're probably expecting that to dodge every question, which is they're probably not going to want to do. But if it's a hybrid event where there are questions about stuff that the conservatives do want to talk about, then you can get that one question in and at least get them on the record. That'd be sort of my approach if I was organizing an event.
And I mean, the obvious candidate is any groups doing affordable housing work. If there's, because that's the big hot topic at the moment, whether it's people themselves who can't have a home or those of us who have a home whose friends and relatives can't have a home. So if it was affordable housing, and just throw the word energy in, and Jonathan Ruster might be persuaded to come and say how nuclear energy is a wonderful thing, right? Yes, Glyn, your thoughts?
Well, I was thinking of what questions could be asked of candidates. And it seems to me that one question that we should ask a candidate from any party is, if they are elected, what amount of pressure can they hope to be successful at in putting on the leadership of their party to reduce fracking, reduce old growth logging, reduce export of coal, reduce pelletization of wood for heating, and that sort of thing, because it seems to me that we've got precisely nowhere with progressive parties or supposedly progressive parties whose thrust when in power and also when in opposition do not favor these very necessary steps that I just mentioned, that are necessary to ameliorate the increasing climate crisis.
Yeah, thanks, Glyn. So Jason is saying, guys, you probably don't want to hear this, but there's a lot of research that debates don't impact the election results at all. So a candidate, who doesn't show up, doesn't worry. Now, if you think that a debate's got 200 people and you think you've got a wonderful full room, that seems fantastic, but you've got 30,000 people voting out there. So what certainly groups like Sunrise are doing in America is like, show up at any place where the candidates are there with a camera, film them when you ask them the critical question, to get them on the record, either answering it or dodging the question, so you can then promote that on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, as to either they're refusing to answer the question or talking about it. So let's go to Laura, and then Francis, and then Jason. Laura.
I just was wondering if anybody is working on something like a table comparing platforms for the different parties that could be easily shared on different topics. Like, I know a lot of platforms aren't even being released yet, but we did that in 2017 and it was actually pretty effective. We could share it. It was province-wide, and yeah, comparing at that time it was the Green, NDP, and Liberals on issues around LNG and fracking and other greenhouse gas reduction targets. I'm wondering if the Emiko, if the BC Climate Emergency Campaign, or yeah, anyhow.
I'll quickly go to Sebastian. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I have a direct answer for that. The app that we talked about earlier, the website VoteMate, is going to do exactly that. I've seen it demoed for the previous ones. It's amazing. There's even a function where you can go and be like, hey, what are the stances on any issue? Because it's not just climate, it's everything, right? So let's say it's crime or something like that, right? And it'll give you each of the platform pieces summarized in a consistent way without an attachment to the party. And you can click on the ones you like, and at the end it'll tell you which platform you like, which is super cool. But it's also, you can also just directly read them there. There's a lot of work going into that. And it's actually also going to be supplemented with expert analysis that you can access directly from the website. So it hasn't launched yet for this election, but I'm just putting in the chat there. I'm sure I'll message Guy maybe when it comes out so that he can put it in the newsletter. But I think that's going to be your best place for doing the platform comparisons.
Fabulous.
Okay. So is anybody though planning on doing like a graphic or something with that at this point or not?
Graphics are inherently simple and platforms are inherently complex and
Yeah,
detailed. So I can't
exactly.
imagine doing a graphic on that, but who knows? It's
Okay,
not on my
all
cover.
right.
Let's go to Francis and then Jason. Francis.
Yeah, I was just going to say I belonged to a church back a ways that had a very effective strategy, and they were canvassing all the parties for their platform, and then they were they were making recommendations on the subject on the basis of issues. This one's the best for climate. This one's the best for childcare, or whatever. And they had such a reputation that the candidate that they recommended often won. So I don't know about that sort of strategy. It sounds like so much more sophisticated than those days.
Yeah, the bigger a reputation that a local organization has, the more likely it is that they'll be taken seriously. Jason, back to you.
Oh, I'm off mute? Yes, okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to speak a little bit about debate. I don't want to pour cold water on an idea. It's certainly, I think, worth it to shame conservatives for not being accessible or for not being willing to answer questions. But I also spent many years working for BC NDP provincial office, and so I know how partisans look at debates, and they tend to think like this is going to be all of the hyper-partisan people in the area will bring their supporters. There won't actually be anybody who has an open mind in attendance, and so I'm better off going out to meet people on the doorstep or talk to voters. And so, yeah, this is why one of the reasons we're encouraging folks to visit candidates directly in their campaign office, to wear Frack Free BC t-shirts or bring posters with them while they're doing so. And I mean, that same experience, my time at BC NDP provincial office, just makes me want to underscore Sebastian's point about following the election law. After what happened with Anjali Appadurai in the leadership race, the party will not hesitate to use election laws to come at people in order to silence them or stop them from spreading problematic messages. So you need to consider very carefully whether or not what you're doing counts as election advertising. And if it does, it needs an authorization line from a financial agent, and you need to register with Elections BC as a third-party advertiser. If the activities that you're engaged in were started well before the campaign and will continue well after, which is, thank goodness, the case for us here at Wilderness Committee, we have an argument to say we're not doing any election advertising. But yeah, thank you for letting me share this.
Before you go away, either you or Seb, some people might think, oh, registering as a is very complex. How long does it take, and does it cost any money and stuff like that to register as a, what would you call it? Not a lobbyist, but a
third-party election advertiser is what it is.
Is that a half-hour form you fill in?
Yeah, it's a form that you fill out with Elections BC. In terms of how long it takes, I think it really depends on how much election advertising you're planning on doing. If you spend over a certain amount of money, you absolutely have to submit a return showing where the money came from. You have to demonstrate that the money was Canadian money that came from Canadian donors that are authorized to donate, not unions or organizations or businesses, for example. Yeah, excuse me. Elections Canada and Elections BC definitely has, yes, the Sebastian has shared the documents in the chat. And then I also found a really helpful blog from, there it is. So Point Blank Creative is an agency that was founded by a guy who was a former long-term communications professional at BC NDP Provincial Office. And he wrote a short blog about you know, what to be on the watch for in terms of third-party, nonpartisan engagement. So might be an easy one to read, the Point Blank blog. And then if you are going to be buying ads, spending money, then yeah, think carefully. Do I need to register? Because it'll save yourself some headaches to do so.
So what I'm hearing is that even if you're spending no money whatsoever, it might be safe to register just in case. If it's, you know, be interesting to know how long it does take. If anyone gets experience on how long it takes, let us know. Karen, over to you.
Thanks, Guy. We've talked a lot about candidates meetings and questions for candidates, but my question for everyone, for the presenters, is what's the most effective thing we can do to make climate more of an election issue in the eyes of the public? Is it writing letters to the editor? Because if the more we can do that, the more we can get candidates to talk about it. You know, as Al Gore said, politicians don't lead, they follow. So how can we be leading with this?
So Karen, you have a reputation as a very successful letter to the editor writer. Give everyone one tip.
Write from passion and see if you can link on to something that's already in the paper you're writing to. They like that.
Yeah, because you get your letters published in the Times Colonist. I see that, and in probably the Souk paper as well.
But I write even more, Guy, than get published. But it seems like it's underutilized, as although I've seen some great climate letters in the TC lately. So I think that's a really, for me, I think it's effective to put it into the public narrative.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Seb, back to you.
Yeah, so Karen was asking about how to make it more of an election issue. I think that does presuppose the idea that we do want it to be more of an election issue, which isn't necessarily the case. I'm not saying one way or the other, but I think that there's good thinking on both sides. It's not clear that if it was a major issue, it would mobilize our side more than their side. That is the climate people versus the non-climate people, right? For me, that's why the Get Out the Vote efforts by OFC are super, super critical, because we are just mobilizing environmental voters, and they already know the environment's important. They're going to be voting for those people who support the environment, that support climate policies. We need to make sure those people are voting. It is the most effective thing. So that would be my response to your question, Karen. And just to hark back to the conversation on election advertising, not an expert on this stuff, but one of the organizations that I'm a director with, we were dinged in 2022 for local election advertising issues. And while money is an important part of things, it's actually the audience that you're talking to that is more important for determining if something is election advertising. If you go up to a person on the street who you don't know, and you just start talking to them and you're saying, vote on an issue this way, or vote for this candidate, or fracking is really important to stop, you are engaging the public, and that is election advertising. If you put up a sign that says, come to my talk, we're going to talk about the environment, they come to your talk, and you say the exact same thing that you would have said to that person on the street, it's okay, because at that point, you're not engaging the public. You're engaging with people who have come to an event that you've put on that doesn't have advertising that qualifies as election advertising. That's the key difference. But again, I'm not an expert on this, and you should get clarity directly from Elections BC to protect yourself.
It seems to me that the very period of an election becomes the most anti-democratic period in the whole 4-year process.
It's especially troubling because it's all complaint based. So if I was a conservative, I would have a whole squad of people complaining about every single environmentalist I could. because that would be the most effective thing to destroy the opposition.
Wow. Jane, your wisdoms or your questions.
Oh, thank you. What Dogwood is doing is bird dogging. So Karen was asking, how do we get this message out to the candidates? So we're trying to meet them wherever they're at. We'll find out if they're having barbecues or meet and greets, town halls, wherever. I did my first foray at the Saanich Fair. Greens and NDP were very open to answering our questions and being filmed. Went to the Conservative candidate. No way, he says. And he says, no recording, nothing, right to our headquarters. He wouldn't even speak about it. So we're doing this filming off the side now. We don't ask the candidates. We just come up, say, hey, I'm a constituent. I want to know what your stand is on this, and have somebody off to the side filming. And also just to keep asking these questions to the candidates wherever they are. We're going to go to their campaign offices with placards as well, and leave them information about our issues like stop fracking and LNG. So we're going to constantly barrage them, you know, with these questions on LNG, so it becomes an election issue.
And while I've got you, since Dogwood is a registered third-party advertiser, when you are talking on the streets, do you have to wear a Dogwood badge or something to show that you're part of Dogwood to protect you? How does it work?
No, we're not going as Dogwood. We're just going as a constituent, if we
Okay.
can. Yeah, that the Saanich Fair was a little bit tricky because I wasn't a constituent, but I said I'm with you know, SciCan. We're a collection of grassroots people from, you know, different communities across the South Island, and you know, we just wanted to ask you what your stand is on, you know, fracking, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And the Conservatives, I asked the Conservative, why won't you answer our questions? He says, you're an organization. I said, but we're just ordinary grassroots people. He said, nope, you have to send your questions to headquarters.
You could say, well, the Chamber of Commerce is an organization too, and the City of Victoria. Just anyway, that's getting into.
Yeah.
Other thoughts or questions people want to bring up before we close? Anything on your mind? Tara, do you want to share your experience as a candidate and what it's like knocking on doors? Tara's running for the Green Party in Burnaby East.
Oh my God, this could be seen as partisan, giving me a platform. Actually, it's been quite good, especially in our area, because climate has become a major concern, at least up at SFU and, you know, on Burnaby Mountain, it's a big issue. And the tank farm, you know, they recently had a simulation of if there was a blast on the tank farm, and if there was a gas leak, and if there was, you know, oil spilling at the Westridge terminal. So, so in my area, Burnaby East, it's become quite the hot topic. So yeah, I'm the poster child for that right now. But also, people have been quite open to what I think Emiko was talking about, linking climate with affordability issues. So I think that has to always be kept in mind, because I think people are feeling, you know, the angst where affordability and housing is concerned. And yeah, I think it's been quite. What I find is the younger people, unfortunately or fortunately, are a little bit more progressive. They're not so politically active, but that could be an area where we could harness perhaps more climate voters if we, you know, yeah.
So Jason, from the stuff you're posting in the chat, you seem to have a lot of what I call folk wisdom around engaging with candidates and stuff like that. Why don't you write a blog on Jason's 5 folk wisdoms for engaging candidates, and then we'll put it in our newsletter. Have, you know, your thing about, you know, saying crazy things. Don't be afraid to poke a little fun, right?
I've been paid campaign staff on now 15 partisan campaigns at every level of government, and been a member of the NDP for about 22 years now. Don't hold that against me, I'm sorry. So yeah, it comes from being a sucker for the abuse and like keep going back for more. This election is going to be the first one in a very long time I'm not employed for a candidate, but instead will be focused on the nonpartisan effort at Frack Free BC. Yeah, I will.
So can you take your Wilderness Committee hat off and write a personal, like my wisdom, my life's experience on how to engage with candidates during an election? And we'll publish it in the weekend news.
I do have, that's an interesting idea, Guy. Let's talk about this offline more. I appreciate the suggestion very much. Thank you.
Okay. Roger, you may be the last person to have a thought here. Go for it.
Thank you. Tara, do you have experience with the 20 or 30,000 students that are up at Simon Fraser as to how they could be motivated? Because that could be a very large and perhaps an expanded opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. Roger, I went up today. They had Clubs Day at SFU. And I had just gone to collect my rack cards and I just chanced upon this event. And it was very interesting. There was someone who is, so they have a club, an eco club, which is just deals with issues about TMX. You know, what would happen or in case of a tank farm fire or evacuation process and things like that. And what the student union president found is that a lot of the students are not really clued into, the politics of the tank farm or the knowledge about the tank farm, because they just come to university, do their classes and go back. And but that's what they were saying. Now the city of Burnaby is reaching out to the student union, and they're getting them, quite involved. Trying to get them involved. So yes, they would definitely be a student. Somebody we could, excite about the elections. And I say this from a non-partisan point of view, because a lot of the students that come don't actually live in my ridings, but it would be really nice if, all universities could do that, just take some, climate issue and, get them involved in that way. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, let's wrap things up. There's a few links about WeCan I want to share. So let me go back to my share screen. So first of all, there's a Shady, if you can put the link in the chat about a survey. If you can fill in the survey about this form before you go. If you want to become, if you're not already, your organization is not already a member of WeCan, please, there's a link in the chat for that. Be coming up soon in a minute. That's the form. That's the survey form she just put there. Just so, and then if you fancy joining any of us in our working teams within CAPA, that'd be great. And next, if you feel like sending a donation to help with our work, that'd be great as well. And I'm hoping that Shady will put the link in the chat for that as well. We depend entirely on voluntary donations and voluntary members' fees from our member organizations. We're up to 280 member groups, and Shaylee's in the process of putting together a really good new directory of all the groups on our website, which will be probably announcing this weekend with all their links to the stuff like that and a map of where you can find them. And this is just an amusing thing I did last time. Can I have a wake-up call? Yeah, hottest month on Earth for 125,000 years. Are you awake now? And just a big thank you to everyone for all the work you're doing in your different member groups, because it's a collective thing we do together, all this stuff, And so let me go to gallery again and do my little closing thing. You know how if you're in a circle, you might join hands to close a meeting, but on Zoom, you can put your hands up like this. Everyone put your hands up. Turn your cameras on. Cameras on, everyone, where possible. Now move your hands so that half your hand is off the screen, and you're now holding hands with the person next to you. And we can just strengthen our solidarity and our care for each other and support for each other in this whole climate movement, because we know that there's a real crisis going on that the public needs to know about, and we're championing solutions and success. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Emiko. Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, our team have put this together. Thank you to Steve, who's not with us anymore. Thank you for Shaylee for hosting the whole thing. Thank you to our CAPA team, Tara, Douglas, Roger, folks like that. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you all soon. And thanks for all those hearts, Jane.
Thank
now.
you, Guy.
Bye, folks. We'll just have the organizing team stay behind. Just do a little debrief. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.